What is up, everybody? Welcome to another live stream. Let me know if you can hear me all right and if you can see the screen okay. Morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. Thought we would do another live stream since we did a good one the other night. Wanted to just follow up. There have been some slight changes, but the forecast remains relatively on track, but wanted to do a little bit of an update here this morning now that we have some data in, now that storms are actually firing. So that is what we're going to do in this video. So welcome, everybody. Maybe a touch louder. So I did turn it down. I went back and replayed the stream from the other night, and it was a little bit loud, but we'll turn it up just a little bit. How's that? Let me know how that sounds. Audio's a bit quiet. Yeah. Let me know if that changed. I just turned the volume up a little bit, so let me know if that is any different. But we'll wait a couple minutes here, let people filter in. Getting some storms actually here in Norman right now from this early batch. That's kind of going to be the initial batch of storms that will intensify into the main round of storms later on across the slight risk area. Sounds good now. Perfect. Good to see everybody in the chat. As we did the other night, if you have questions on anything from the video on the setup, let's hold those to the end of the video, and I'll definitely do a Q&A session at the end. Let's try to keep them focused on today's setup. We can do another stream another time for just general meteorology questions, but for now, let's just go ahead and focus questions about this setup today alone, today or tomorrow. We're going to focus on today's threat because it is the bigger threat, but we do have a risk tomorrow, and we'll go through that here in a minute. But yeah, well, maybe another minute or so, and then we will start. Yes, severe warning in Oklahoma. First severe warning of the day for the main risk area. Like I said, hearing some thunder outside this morning. So storms are already starting to rock and roll here, and they will only intensify as we go forward in time with this event this afternoon, or in this morning and into this afternoon. Yes, MD just released. We will discuss that here in a second, but I guess we can go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and dive in here. So this is the current day one outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. They have kept it at a slight risk. I know we were talking a bit in the last live stream about whether or not they would upgrade to enhanced risk. Well, they have not, and we talked about some of the reasons why. I thought a slight risk was more than warranted for this setup, but really nothing more. So large slight risk, they have changed the lines a little bit since our last stream. Slight risk extends across eastern Oklahoma, northeast Texas, northern half of Louisiana, much of Mississippi now. That is a change that has been made in recent updates. Much of Mississippi now included in the slight risk, western Tennessee and Kentucky, southern Illinois, southern third or so of Missouri. Outside of that, marginal risk, level 1 out of 5, extends all the way up from the Great Lakes down into the Gulf Coast states. Does include the OKC metro down toward Dallas-Fort Worth. Dallas not quite in the slight risk, probably eastern portions of the metro in there, but marginal risk does cover Dallas-Fort Worth for this setup. All hazards on the table for today. Tornado risk is at a 5%, pretty large 5% here, really from southern Illinois and Missouri southward through all of Arkansas, northern Louisiana, much of Mississippi. So just kind of a broad brushed 5% there with a 2% extending from the Great Lakes southward in that marginal risk area. Then a damaging wind threat. Tornado and damaging wind threat is going to be the main risk for today, especially damaging winds. They have a 15% out for that, coincident with the large slight risk. And then we could see some isolated large hail with the initial convective activity before the storm mode is going to degrade a little bit into a more messy sort of setup. But 15% area for hail there from northeast Texas through eastern Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas, southwest Missouri. Mesoscale discussion is out right now. That was released about 12 minutes ago as we are talking here. Basically the brown area from far southwest Missouri into eastern and south central Oklahoma, north Texas, including DFW there, as we already have some storms that are getting going. Let's take a look at the current radar here for you. So quite a bit of activity already ongoing across the threat area. the atmosphere is not quite ready to support robust severe weather yet, but we do have a lot of convection that's ongoing, and the models were kind of showing this over the last couple of days. Convection all the way from Missouri down through Oklahoma into northwest Texas-ish, and that is all going to be the start of our main round of storms. For volume is still low. This is a brand new mic. I don't think it's the mic, but I can turn it up a little bit more if you'd like. But yeah, this is a brand new microphone, and it is better than the old one. So let me know if that works, but hopefully the sound is a little bit better. So yeah, storms ongoing here. We do have a severe thunderstorm warning across southern Oklahoma right now for some of these little bit stronger cores. Severe thunderstorm warning basically including the area just east of the Sulphur, Oklahoma area, Ada over to Stonewall, south of the Oklahoma City metro. But this, you can see some pretty robust storms getting going right now, and that is going to be, again, the initial signs of severe weather development in this setup. We're going to see the radar kind of light up a little bit more. Convective coverage and intensity will increase slowly through the morning into the afternoon. And here's our current satellite. You can see out ahead of this batch of storms, here's our current batch of storms right there. You can see a decent amount of sunshine out ahead of that. So we are destabilizing pretty quickly. Low-level flow is out of the south, so we're bringing up that moisture from the south into our area of interest. And that's going to only destabilize the environment with time. And then we are going to see, again, convective coverage and intensity increase through the afternoon, but mesoscale discussion is out. All hazards are on the table, with large hail and damaging winds going to be the threat with large hail, especially going to be the threat with more isolated convection initially, and then we should see a transition to more of a damaging wind threat as they are hinting at a developing squall line becoming more organized with time by midday into early afternoon. So severe weather event is already underway here this morning. Early start to things. This is going to be a long duration severe threat, starting early, ending late, going well into the nighttime hours tonight. All right. Here is our mesoscale analysis data. So this is at 500 millibars, and you see that area of the piece of energy from the trough that we talked about in the last video. That is this guy right there across West Texas really right now, the axis of that trough. Right over West Texas, going to continue to impinge upon areas to the east, the I-35 corridor here over the next couple of hours. And so that is going to be our main forcing mechanism. That's why we're seeing storms already erupting in this setup. We already have a moist environment in place, not super destabilized yet, but we have enough moisture and just enough instability to support thunderstorm development. With this forcing coming in with timed fairly early in the event, that's why we're seeing storms erupting pretty early in this setup. But this trough is going to continue to shift off to the east through the day and going to be our main forcing mechanism. A very compact, potent trough, though, moving through the southern plains. It's going to be our main synoptic forcing in this event. Down at the surface, we have seen a little bit of a surface low develop. Again, as we talked about in the last video, that main surface low all the way up in Canada with a frontal zone draped down to the south through that pressure tongue there, all the way down into the southern plains to this kind of secondary surface low that has developed. We'll go through the surface obs here in just a second, but secondary surface low has developed in northern Oklahoma, and to the south of that, another frontal zone as well. A little bit of a cold front / dry line type deal down there, and that's what the storms are kind of initiating on to the southwest of that surface low. And then but both of these frontal zones will be initiating boundaries for convection in today's setup for the Midwest and Great Lakes. This cold front to the north will be our main setup, and that will start to surge pretty fast off to the east and southeast going on with time. But this secondary surface low will sort of develop along this frontal zone as we go through the day today. And it's not expected to tighten all that much. We don't have a super optimal setup for really strong surface cyclogenesis, but we will see that surface low develop off to the northeast along the frontal zone a little bit as we go forward in time with this event. So as we talked about in the last video, a little bit of a disorganized surface setup, and basically the models were on point with this surface low development. We talked about the fact that if we saw a stronger surface low developing here in the Oklahoma-Kansas border vicinity, then we might see a more robust event, stronger low-level flow, stronger wind profiles leading to a higher end ceiling for this event. But this is pretty much how models were hinting at things going with this surface low development. Fairly weak development, and overall still a little bit of a disorganized surface pattern overall. The UCAR site is down that I typically use for surface observation, so we will use the SPC surface observation map here. So this is the 14Z obs. So these are about 40 minutes old now, but still decent for our purposes here. So you can see that surface low there in northwest to northern Oklahoma. The wind barbs kind of rotating in a counterclockwise fashion there. So surface low, again, a weak surface low situated there in northwest Oklahoma, probably just to the south of the Alva area right there. Frontal zone draped off to the north. You see the wind shift there. Northerly winds across the western half of Kansas. Southerly winds off to the east. So frontal zone somewhere in this vicinity here. And then down to the south, we have that secondary frontal zone as well. Very dry air off to the west, dew points in the 20s and 30s, with dew points in the 60s and 70s across a broad swath here off to the east. So moisture is not going to be an issue with this setup at all. You can see 70s dew points have made their way all the way up into the Arklatex region. 60s dew points popular across Oklahoma, Arkansas, and areas off to the east. So pretty broad area where we have a favorable air mass for severe storms in this setup. So that is also going to lead to why this is going to be a long duration threat. We have a lot of real estate that these storms can cover that is going to be favorable for, have a favorable environment to support thunderstorms and severe thunderstorms at that. So that is, again, is going to continue to destabilize with time. We're going to try to continue to get those higher dew points up into eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas, etc. Continued warm, moist advection. Temperatures will warm through filtered surface heating at the very least. And so the atmosphere is only going to become more and more favorable with time, especially from a thermodynamic perspective in this event. All right, of course, the SPC sounding site was down as well, so I'm going to have to use the College of DuPage site here for our soundings today. Let's start at Norman. So this is the 12Z Norman sounding. Again, not a ton of instability at this point. Fairly dry atmosphere aloft. Nothing. This is not really a super, eye-popping sounding, if you will, for significant severe weather. A little bit kind of a dry air aloft, not really a well-defined moist layer in the low levels. Let's go to Fort Worth and see if we see a little bit better environment down there. A little bit better environment, a little more of that loaded gun type sounding with some instability aloft you see there, but pretty stout capping. That shouldn't be an issue, again, with warming and moistening continuing with time, and with the trough moving in and that forcing able to lift and cool that capping inversion. We should be able to overcome that capping inversion pretty quickly in this event. Moisture is a little bit on the shallow side. You see that kind of little inverted V there. That's basically the extent of our moist layer there, which is pretty shallow. Would expect to see that deepen with time as we continue to get that moist advection off to the north and that trough moves in. But overall, at least we have some instability in the environment, and that should only increase as we go forward in this event. We don't have the hodographs here, but you can kind of imagine what the hodograph might look like. We do see surface winds out of the south at about 10 knots, veering to southwesterly at about 30 knots there at 850 millibars or so, about a kilometer off the surface. So we do have some veering and strengthening of the winds with height, which would mean we have a little bit of curvature in the hodograph with some stronger flow aloft, fairly unidirectional above about 850 millibars or so. So definitely a profile that would favor severe weather, winds increasing in strength and veering as you go up in the atmosphere. So this is an environment that would favor severe weather, assuming continued destabilization. Here is the Little Rock sounding. Not much different from the Oklahoma or from the Norman sounding here. We're still pretty far off at 7 a.m., but again, we've destabilized pretty fast here. Just looking at our mesoanalysis data, if we take a look at our mixed layer CAPE, you can see already above 1,000 joules per kilogram in a lot of spots, but still some capping to deal with. That's why we're not seeing the storms really take off quite yet. But again, that is going to happen, especially as that trough moves through. The shear will increase, and that we'll see destabilization get up into the 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram range. Probably a good bet with this setup. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some model data here really quick. This is the 12Z NAM. The NAM, as we talked about in the last video, was a little bit of an outlier. Really not on the same page as the European model and the GFS, but it has trended in a manner toward the GFS and Euro, and so we're kind of on the same page now. So we'll just take a look at the NAM here for our purposes. So you see that trough here at 500 millibars, that little shortwave. This is our main trough off to the north, and that's going. These two features are going to phase going into tomorrow and become a real potent trough moving into the East Coast. Thankfully, instability is going to be very weak because this would favor severe weather. It should, given this trough progression, but thankfully instability going to be very, very weak as the trough moves off to the east tomorrow. So only a marginal severe risk off to the north. Let me quickly show you tomorrow's threat there. Just a couple of marginal risk areas. Big marginal risk, Great Lakes down into the East Coast states there, down toward the Carolinas, and then a little bit of an area down there along the Gulf Coast. 2% tornado risk down along the Gulf Coast, but isolated damaging wind going to be the threat otherwise. So just a low-end threat tomorrow as storms continue, but that is thanks to the weak instability tomorrow. So here's that shortwave. You see it's going to continue to move off to the east with time, moving into eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas by this afternoon. This is at 4 p.m. We see pretty much squarely that slight risk area is right in the exit region of that trough, very focused trough there. A lot of forcing, though, with this trough, and so we're going to see a lot of storms. As we saw, we're already seeing a lot of convection developing in this environment, and that's only going to increase as the trough moves through. So the storm mode here is going to be a pretty messy one today. We're going to see, again, things kind of congeal into more of a solid line or multiple line segments. And so damaging winds are going to be the main threat today, just given the storm mode already getting quite messy. And so that is going to be, so damaging winds are going to be the main risk, but a few spin-up tornadoes as well. We'll talk about the threat for prefrontal supercells here in just a second. All right, so that trough continues to move off to the east going into the evening hours, and then the main trough kind of fills in behind it. These two phase together, becoming one large trough going into tomorrow. All right, let's go down to the surface here, see how the surface low kind of progresses with time. So here we are at 12Z, again, very weak surface low. The NAM doesn't even have a closed contour here in northwest Oklahoma, but as we saw on our map, definitely a little bit of a circulation there in northwest Oklahoma. Going off to into the late morning and early afternoon, we see a very messy, chaotic surface pattern here. That is due to all of that convection kind of filling in and eating into the warm sector there, all those cool temperatures. That is all convection based there. So that moves off to the east. Again, a fairly disorganized look to this surface pattern, not a real tight surface low. The frontal zone is a little bit difficult to tell with all of this convection, but not an optimal setup for significant severe weather. At least at this point, at least that's what the models are showing. Then we go into the evening, continues to move off to the east. We do have some nice southerly flow out there in the warm sector ahead of these supercells, or ahead of the line, and any embedded supercells could produce some spin-up tornadoes there, with assuming the low-level jet increases with time. So here is that low-level jet, 850 millibar flow out of the southwest. And we see a nice little plume there of 30 to 50 knots or so. Here's at 0Z, so 7 p.m. Nice little low-level jet to support the convection and perhaps induce that strong. Will do a couple things. Of course, increase that low-level warm moist convection, increase low-level wind shear to perhaps yield that tornado risk within the squall line. But also you can get some of that stronger flow aloft transported down to the surface via downdrafts, and that can help induce a strong wind threat with this setup. So the low-level jet does tend to increase with time as we go into the Ohio River Valley region. So any storms that are ongoing will experience increasing shear going into the nighttime hours tonight. Instability, of course, will wane with time, so kind of a trade-off there, but severe threat should persist into the evening with that spin-up tornado and damaging wind risk as far north as the Great Lakes as well. Going to see strong low-level flow all the way up to the Great Lakes region, so that should lead to the persistence of some lower-topped convection up here with a damaging wind and very, very low-end tornado risk, but mostly just a damaging wind risk. Let's take a look at our moisture here, dew points. So let's go down to our southern plains sector. So we already, again, have quite robust moisture across the region in place. We're going to continue to get that to get pulled northward with time. Take an 18Z sounding here, eastern Oklahoma, maybe the Fort Smith, Arkansas area. And then we'll take one down here in northeast Texas to kind of see a little bit of the environment across the warm sector. So that is pretty convectively contaminated. Let me try to pick a different one there, maybe just a little bit farther east into Arkansas. Again, when you get a lot of convectively contaminated soundings like that, that's a sign that you have a lot of convection ongoing. So this one is a little bit contaminated as well, a little bit tough to tell. Maybe let's take one down in here. little bit off to the southeast. Just trying to find a sounding that's not contaminated. You see, it's very difficult to do that because the convection is so widespread. So here's a clean sounding for us here in kind of west central Arkansas. We do have instability, definitely weaker than what models were showing a couple of days ago. We saw pretty robust instability profiles a couple of days ago with this setup. We do see a little bit of a warm nose aloft, about 500 millibars or so, fairly skinny Cape profile. So that's definitely a trend downward from what the models were showing in our live stream a couple days ago. Lapse rates aloft, very definitely adequate, but lower than what they were being progged to be. We do see a little bit of turning in the low levels of the hodograph, but overall, a fairly straight line hodograph. Deep layer shear will increase with time. So all in all, looks to me, again, factoring in the messy storm mode that is already ongoing and will continue to get more messy with time, and the fact that we're seeing kind of limited low-level shear and limited instability would tell me that this is going to be mostly an isolated large hail and damaging wind risk with the early convection. This is 18Z, so 1 p.m. Let's move on to 21Z. Again, it might be a little bit difficult to pick a clean sounding here, but storms will have moved off into southern Missouri, Arkansas, northeast Texas by this point. You see weaker dew points off to the east. That may be a somewhat of an eastward limiting feature to once storms move into this area. We may see a little bit of a downtrend as instability decreases across that area. Again, very difficult to pull a clean sounding here in this environment. Let me put on the precipitation and see if we can pull a clean sounding here. You see just a lot of convection there. Very difficult to pull a clean sounding. Let me take one out in here, maybe just on the edge of this convection near Little Rock. So you see a decent looking profile there. Again, somewhat skinny instability, 1400 joules per kilogram mixed layer Cape, 84 over 69 at the surface. So decent surface heating, getting those temperatures up into the 80s. Hodographs, definitely some curvature there in the low levels of the hodograph. So again, that may favor a spin-up tornado risk with time. Let's see, deep layer shear vectors, 218 degrees. So the deep layer shear vectors would look something like that, and your orientation of the line will look something like that. So not a super optimal look for tornado potential within the line. The strong low-level shear may help overcome that, but you want to see a more perpendicular shear vector orientation with respect to the line, at least low-level shear vector orientation with respect to the line, to allow for more spin-ups within the line. So not an optimal setup for spin-ups within the line, but low-level shear being at what it is, 240 plus meters squared per second squared effective storm relative helicity, may allow for some spin-ups, some spin-up tornadoes within the line. But I think damaging winds are going to be the main risk in this setup. And large hail, that risk should wane with time. That's mostly an early day risk as these storms are trying to remain somewhat more discrete. Some slightly stronger cores within the line there, and any slightly more discrete storms ahead of the line will produce large hail. But once we get that storm mode to congeal, and that's going to allow for that large hail threat to wane, damaging wind risk to increase. So overall, not really an amazing environment, but definitely would favor a threat for damaging winds and a few spin-up tornadoes within the line. Here we are at 0Z. You see just a lot of convection there. We'll take a look at the cams in a second, but I'm trying to pick some cleaner soundings here, and it is definitely difficult. But overall, we saw that we will be able to, damaging winds and a few spin-up tornadoes will be the main threat with this setup. Large hail early on before things truly congeal into a big squall line there. So that is going to be that. And so let's talk about the threat for prefrontal supercells. I know a lot of folks in the chat have been talking about that this morning. And we, again, are going to have pretty strong warm advection, strong southerly flow out ahead of the frontal zone and ahead of this line. So do we have enough here for prefrontal supercells? So let's take a look here. Let's take a look at our surface map and see if we see any confluence bands. So let me put on the radar here to show you where our main band is. So here's where the main band of convection is going to be, at least currently. We do see a little bit of confluence maybe out here across northeast Texas into the kind of Gulf Coast region. Winds out of the southeast down here, out of the south across Texas. It's pretty strong convergence, pretty strong confluence down there out in East Texas. And again, strong southerly flow, warm, moist air mass. Let's take a look here and see if we see anything as far as So again, this pretty lot of real estate here to support discrete convection. We are going to be a little bit farther south of the overall forcing, maybe just a glancing blow from the trough as it moves through, but forcing will be weaker down here. Warm advection may be the main mechanism to support supercell development. Let's go to 21Z, and I'll take one out here in far East Texas, the piney woods of East Texas. Some of the worst chase terrain I've ever been in. So this is what we have going on here, at least on the NAM, showing a pretty favorable profile for perhaps some prefrontal supercell development. Pretty strong instability, 0 to 3 kilometer cape, pretty high, 142 joules per kilogram of 0 to 3 kilometer cape there. Pretty thick profile, definitely different than what we saw off to the north. And I'll mention the NAM is usually pretty aggressive with instability, so the fact that it's showing pretty limited profiles farther to the north and it is somewhat concerning, at least in the vein of severe weather. But down here, pretty robust instability, 2,400 joules per kilogram mixed layer cape, 86 over 73, very moist environment, very, very moist. You see a very saturated profile there, over 2 inches of precipitable water, so very, very high moisture content in this environment. The hodographs definitely improved over what we saw a couple days ago. Bulk shear about 40 knots or so, fairly lengthy hodographs, a little bit of curvature in the low levels of the hodograph, but strong 0 to 3 kilometer cape with a little bit of some low level shear. So overall a favorable environment. I see Grace Cohen in the chat. She's a member of the Omega project, so definitely I would be interested in hearing what those Omega project tools have to say. So that will be interesting to see. It is a fairly fast-moving jet streak, but just some other things that I think are going to hold the setup back overall from reaching its ceiling. So down here, eastern Texas, we might be able to see East Texas, West Louisiana, Southwest Arkansas. Definitely not out of the question that we see a few prefrontal supercells. Again, forcing is going to be on the weak side, but we do see a good bit of confluence out here across this region. So that with that strong southerly flow could lead to some prefrontal supercells. I still think it's a bit of a conditional threat, and the tornado risk is not all that high, but definitely worth keeping an eye on. We'll see if our cams show that here. So this is the 12Z HER. So we'll start there. You see just very messy convection, congeals into clusters and lines very quickly. This is at 1 p.m. So very, very messy convection here. But you do see a few of those beans try to get going in East Texas out ahead of the line. So that will be something to watch for sure. Down here, trailing end of the line, the HERS seems to like a little bit of a more intense look down there on the tail end of the line. This would be more of a large hail and damaging wind risk here. Tornado risk would be very low with those cells, but with unimpeded inflow down to the south, could see some stronger storms on the tail end of the line. And you do see a couple of those little beans try to become robust out ahead of the line. So definitely something to watch out for. A little bit higher confidence in this than what we saw a couple days ago. But that is going to be something to watch. East Texas, Northwest Louisiana, Southwest Arkansas. Location of the jet seems to be unfavorable for high-end stuff. Yeah, I agree. Just from a subjective, qualitative look, it just does not seem like you have a super favorable configuration for significant severe weather. So you see going into the evening, this is at 0Z, so 7 p.m. Central. Some of those beans try to get going ahead of the line. They continue to try to get going ahead of the line, then a pretty strong squall line develops across Louisiana and Mississippi, trailing back into Texas. So overnight, again, spin-up tornadoes are possible. But damaging winds is going to be the main threat with that line moving through. Off to the north, let's take a quick look at areas off to the north there. So this is going to be more in that marginal risk area. You see, again, a lot of convection, a lot of rain up here, not a ton of robust storms. And then by the nighttime hours, a little bit more robust line segments moving through Illinois and Indiana and eventually into Ohio, but it weakens with eastward extent given weakening instability. All right, how about the ARW model? So the HER pretty much pretty decent initialization. We'll start down here out in the south with our ARW model. The HER model, definitely a plausible scenario, and you see with the ARW, much of the same. Very much a messy scenario. But it does have these beans out in East Texas and Louisiana moving off to the north. So definitely something to watch there. Squall line kind of intensifies going into the evening hours. Do see some robustness out here with any confluence bands, even as far south as southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi. May need to watch that going into the evening hours. Let me actually go back to the HRRR real quick, and I'm going to pull a sounding out where these beans are going up just to see what the environment looks like on the HRRR out ahead of these. So there you go. That would be certainly favorable for some development with these, assuming the forcing is strong enough, which I think it would be with warm advection and maybe a glancing blow from the shortwave trough. But decent instability, 1,600 joules per kilogram mixed layer cape with a decent looking hodograph. Plenty of shear for organized convection, almost 40 knots. A little bit of low level shear as well. Strong 3 cape, 100 joules per kilogram of 3 cape. So definitely something to watch, those prefrontal storms out there in East Texas and Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and maybe even into southeast Louisiana and Mississippi going into the nighttime hours. Need to watch that for sure. All right, NSSL WRF here. And probably much of the same, very quick transition to a line, but again, lots of prefrontal stuff. So definitely an interesting look, I will say that. The squall line looks to be the main show for sure. Squall line should get more robust going into the late afternoon and evening hours, moving through West Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana. Should have some strong winds in there with some spin-up tornadoes, especially in this portion of the line that is more oriented north-south. This portion of the line back here, not as favorable for tornadic activity, more so damaging wind threat. But this portion of the line that's oriented more north-south, so the northern half of Mississippi, western Kentucky, and Tennessee, will need to watch out for a better chance of some spin-ups there overnight as the squall line moves through. And then we'll have to watch for any of those prefrontal storms, as all of the cams have some type of development in the open warm sector out ahead of the squall line. So very interesting setup for sure today, and one that is going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out. But that is going to wrap things up here for this live stream. Again, for now, we have a new outlook coming out in about an hour and a half, the 11:30 a.m. update. But here's what we have for now. This is the large slight risk. Eastern Oklahoma, northeast Texas, northern half of Louisiana, much of Mississippi, western Tennessee and Kentucky, southern Illinois, southern Missouri, and all of Arkansas there under the gun for the slight risk. Tornado risk is at a 5% right now. Pretty large 5% at that, and that is mostly going to be for spin-up tornadoes within the line. But again, we need to watch this area for any prefrontal supercells. Southern Arkansas, East Texas, much of Louisiana, and maybe going into southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi as we go into the nighttime hours tonight. But 5% for now, mostly going to cover some spin-ups within the line. Again, not an optimal setup for spin-ups within the line, but we could see, especially in that portion of the line where that's oriented more north-south, could see a higher tornado risk with those, at least with a spin-up tornado risk. Damaging wind going to be the main threat, 15% there within the slight risk area. And then large hail. Again, large hail, not going to be a main threat with this setup, but some of the early storms that try to stay a little bit more discreet may have a few isolated large hailstones there, 15% area from northeast Texas into southwest Missouri. So I think the way this plays out, mostly going to be a line, but we'll have to watch out for some prefrontal action there this afternoon and evening. And then quickly tomorrow, marginal risk out for the Great Lakes down into the Appalachian region, into the East Coast there for just an isolated threat for damaging winds, and then a marginal risk with any continuing storms into tomorrow for parts of southern Mississippi and Alabama, western Florida Panhandle, southwest Georgia. Low-end tornado risk and low-end damaging wind risk there tomorrow. All right, I'll take any questions now, but that's going to be it for what I have to say. So any questions, please fire them in the chat. If they are about, let's focus them on this setup. We can do another stream another time for some general meteorology questions, but want to focus on this setup for today. But if anybody has to go, definitely thanks for watching. Much appreciated. And that sounds good, Grace. Definitely interested to hear what the Omega stuff has to show. But any questions at all? Are any of these going to be strong tornadoes? I don't think that's in the cards today. Low level shear not super strong. The overall parameter space not super strong, and given the storm mode, looks like more of a spin up tornado risk within the line. Any worries for prefrontal cells tomorrow, or will it be mostly the line? Mostly the line, I think. Again, instability is going to be waning pretty significantly. So I would suspect that it's just going to be some lower topped line segments tomorrow moving through, both continuation from today's convection, especially along the Gulf Coast, and then up north we could see some reinvigoration of some line segments tomorrow. But I think it is going to be mostly linear in nature tomorrow. What software do you use? I use a Mac app called Presentify, and I have a Wacom Intuos tablet that I use to draw on the screen. Do you think a 30% wind risk is still possible? I do. I don't know if there's a need for it right now. I think the slight risk with a 15% is more than adequate, but I would not be surprised to see an upgrade to 30% wind, especially with eastern portions of this slight risk. But we'll just wait. We'll wait and see what they have to say with the upcoming outlook. Do you think prefrontals interacting with the line could help the tornado threat? That's always a concern with supercells interacting with the line. We saw it with Enderlin, the EF5 case, which video again coming out hopefully tomorrow, if not Monday, on that in-depth breakdown on that. But yeah, anytime a supercell interacts with a squall line, that tends to be a favorable storm interaction for tornado genesis. Some models have supercells popping up in southern Michigan. Do you think those could spawn tornadoes? So again, the threat up there, up north, going to be very limited by instability, and so this is going to be, the window would be pretty much late afternoon to overnight tonight, and we'll take a sounding here from southern Michigan and see. I don't think there's going to be a very high severe risk up there at all, and you can see just very, very, very limited instability up there. So I think it's going to be more of a low-topped line segment type deal up there. I don't think supercells are a great bet, although deep layer shear is favorable for supercells maybe initially, but limited instability is going to keep that threat down, especially for the tornadic threat. Jonesboro, Arkansas in the slight risk, so definitely need to prepare for the squall line tonight, mostly this afternoon and evening as the squall line moves through. Texarkana area, same thing. A squall line is going to move through in the next few hours or so with that damaging wind and low-end tornado risk. And any cells that pop out ahead of that could have an isolated large hail risk. And then, again, may have to watch for some prefrontal supercells. We'll see if those can get going. That could happen as far north as Texarkana as well. Looks like Austin could get tail-end showers. Yeah, the Austin area, maybe a very low-end severe risk. You are just outside of the marginal risk, but worth keeping an eye on. Maybe some stronger storms down there, just in the very tail end of the line, but no, severe threat not really expected with those. Central Illinois, again, low-end severe risk with low-topped line segments today. Mostly a damaging wind risk, maybe a very outside chance for a spin-up tornado or two, but mostly going to be a low-end damaging wind risk. Do I watch OU football? I'm not a huge college football fan, I'll be honest, but I, as a transplant Okie and as someone who went to OU, I've kind of adopted them as one of my teams, along with Arizona State. Southeast Missouri, same thing. You are in the slight risk, so need to prepare for all hazards, including mostly damaging winds as the squall line comes through and a spin-up tornado risk. I don't think a PDS tornado warning is possible. I don't think strong tornadoes are in the cards today, just based on the storm mode, mostly. Jonesboro, I mentioned that just a bit ago. So Jonesboro, all hazards on the table, especially with the squall line as it moves through later on today. Let's see. Yeah, the sounding is contaminated, I know, but it's very difficult to pull. I'm telling you from what I've looked at, the threat for southern Michigan is going to be a very low-end risk for any severe weather at all. Very, very, very tail end of the marginal risk. And so, not expecting much of a severe risk up there as far as supercells go. The instability is just going to be very, very weak. So, I mean, there you go. Very, very limited instability. So I don't think supercells are a very high threat, and we can even look at the cams there real quick. and show you. This is going to be we'll look at the HER real quick just to show. And I mean, very, very limited convection there. Would be very low topped, and then just kind of a clustered linear mode up there. So I don't expect a lot of a very high supercell risk. I think it's mostly going to be just some clustered storms. We can even take a sounding up in here ahead of this convection tonight and see, and just very, very limited instability. Going to keep the threat low. Definitely an isolated severe risk, but I think mostly just instability is going to keep the ceiling low for up there. Tornado threat for northern Louisiana, yes, definitely going to be a tornado risk as the squall line moves through tonight, and maybe with any prefrontal storms as well. When chasing, is it better to target better thermodynamics or better kinematics? Depends on the setup. You definitely want both, but usually strong low-level wind shear will trump weak instability. So that could be, that's always something I usually do. I chase the stronger wind profiles versus the stronger instability, unless it's something like a cold core setup, when it's mostly thermodynamic driven. So Terre Haute, Indiana, again, low end risk, isolated damaging winds and isolated very low end tornado risk. If there is a 10% tornado risk, where would it be? I just don't think there's going to be a need for an upgrade. I think, if anything, they'll upgrade the wind to 30%, but I just don't see a 10% risk for tornadoes necessary at all with this setup. If they were going to do one, it'd probably be northern Louisiana, Mississippi, southern Arkansas, but I just don't see that happening. April 2nd video, hopefully tomorrow. I've got a couple more sections to finish up. April 2nd video, or April 2nd video. No, April 2nd video is already done. That is my interview with Broyles. I'm going to leave it at that for that setup, just because there were so many other setups to cover, and Broyles did a better job than I could have at explaining the setup there. So going to leave that video, my interview with Chris Broyles, as the main video for that day. Any chance for a significant tornado if everything falls into place? I don't think so, but we'll see. I just don't think so, though. If a major EF3 or even EF4 event occurred today with the current parameters at play, what would you attribute the atmospheric conditionals? I don't understand what you mean there, unfortunately. I just do not think a strong tornado is going to happen today. I'd be very, very shocked if a strong tornado would happen today. What would you say would be more of the surprise of this event if it were to kind of overperform? Significant damaging winds. I know where you're going with that, but I just don't see a high tornado risk today, even with the prefrontal storms. I just don't see a high risk for that. I think it would be you'd see some stronger gusts in the squall line that would warrant maybe a 30%, but tornado risk, I'm not really seeing that. Do you think the 5% risk is warranted? I do. I think that definitely covers the risk. There's enough low-level shear and enough ingredients for a tornado risk today that would warrant a 5%, I would think. Wouldn't be. I definitely think we'll see a few tornado reports from this setup. Appreciate it, Robert. Thank you very much. Best of luck with your studies. Is Springfield, Missouri area biggest threat this morning or later today? It would probably be in the earlier portion of the event. You already have having some storms go through now with this potential second portion of the line coming through later. So mostly going to be in the next few hours through early afternoon. I don't think they'll upgrade to enhanced at 11:30 for wind, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Take a few more questions here. Thanks everybody for the kind words in the chat. Definitely enjoy these lives. So we'll definitely do more of these. What about Starkville, Mississippi? Starkville, Mississippi, late night threats, so definitely keep those weather radios handy, but the squall line could have some damaging winds and spin up tornadoes with it as it moves through. The shortwave gradually start to move faster within model runs, at least from the past several days. Not really. The NAM has kind of come on board with the progression of the shortwave. It's always been kind of a fast-moving shortwave, but not really any different from what we saw a couple days ago. Grace sent a message. Let me pull up the screenshot here with the Omega tools. Thank you very much for that, Grace. some areas of negative values in the forecast centroid. This can be indicative of minimal prefrontals. Feel similar to April 28th. We know what happened on April 28th. Big moderate risk that had really nothing in that warm sector. That makes sense. So definitely seeing from the Omega tools that we may see a lower chance for prefrontals perhaps. So thanks for that, Grace. That is some good info. I appreciate that. So we'll see whether those prefrontal storms get going or not. The models have them. Do we have enough forcing for them to get really robust is the question, but there certainly is a chance, but definitely what I saw there, maybe a lower threat than that, and it mostly will be the squall line. I think the squall line for sure is going to be the main story in this setup for sure. It's just going to be a big squall line, especially going into the evening hours as the low-level jet ramps up. Stronger shear, and perhaps that tornado risk and damaging wind risk moving through southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana, and Mississippi. For anyone chasing today, good luck. It's going to be a tough one for sure. So definitely be safe. St. Louis, you are basically right on the edge of the slight risk. You're in the marginal risk. So low end threat for some damaging winds and a very low end tornado risk. Again, mostly going to be a lower topped lines up there. Have I tried WeatherWise? I have tried WeatherWise. So we are working with Weatherfront with Storm Chaser coaching. So I've been using Weatherfront quite a bit. I actually pulled that up earlier. This is the iPad version, but I'm using it on desktop, and they're working on some cool stuff. So I use a combination of RadarScope, Weatherfront, and I have tried WeatherWise. I just don't use it all that much. But from what I've seen, it is a good app. Josh, thank you for the super chat. Risk for the Tulsa area. So the Tulsa area, you do have some storms moving in from the west right now. Special weather statement out there for Stillwater. So it looks, I think the radar is going to kind of light up a little bit. Storm coverage is going to increase over the next couple of hours. Really, your main threat is going to be over the next couple hours through early afternoon. Then once the storms kind of pass you by, the severe threat will be over. So I think just a low-end risk for maybe an isolated damaging wind gust or large hailstone. Tornado risk is off to the east of you, but it should kind of wane here within the next couple hours. Just watch out for those storms to the west. Springfield, Missouri, biggest threat later this morning or later today. Just answered that. It's going to be through the early afternoon. So just keep an eye out. You already had some storms move through. Keep an eye out for the second round coming through over the next couple of hours. Will you be going live for these updates as the severe weather season marches onward? I'm going to try. Again, why I haven't committed to doing live streams is because I'm chasing during the season. That's my main time to get to storm chase and run tours and whatnot. So very difficult for me to do so on the road. So that's why I haven't really committed to doing them every time. But maybe for this second season, when I'm not chasing as much, we'll try to focus on the live streams for the videos. You guys seem to enjoy it. So as long as you enjoy them, I'm happy to do them. And it's a little bit less work for me than having to record a video, render it, edit it, and then upload it. It takes a lot longer to do that. So. Jonathan, it is never too late to get into meteorology as a career. Meteorology is always, we're always looking for more meteorologists. So, if you want to get into it, there's never a bad time to do so. Let's see, May 18th setup is on the list. Definitely going to do that as a breakdown. That was a big day. So yes, for sure. I'm wondering if the day 5 or 6 day was overdone. Probably not. You have to realize that we've basically kept the probabilities from that. Just because you have a day 5 or day 6 risk does not mean that it's going to be a huge outbreak. They're just all that means when they have that, those are probabilistic outlooks. So they were seeing enough confidence in severe weather that far out, 5-6 days out, and the models were agreeing enough to show a severe threat that they put out a severe weather risk. We didn't know the intensity of it back then. And it just, but it's kind of evolved as expected. So, I think the probabilities have stayed the same since then. 15% for your day 4 through 8 outlook is equivalent to a slight risk, and that's where we are now. So, always keep that in mind. Just because they issue a day 5, 6, 7 risk does not mean that it's going to be a huge outbreak. It just means that there's enough confidence for some type of severe weather in that area. on that specific day. So what about EF2? Again, we could see some EF2 tornadoes, but again, I don't think a strong tornado risk is on the table, but could see a stronger spin up or two. Why do I not work at the SPC? I don't have the experience. And you have to usually be part of the weather service first for a while, and then you get to move up. And I hate shift work. I do not want to do overnight shifts. Derecho, not in the cards today. Mesoscale discussion mentioned EF2s are possible. We could see a stronger spin up within the line, but that's just a guideline there. So doesn't mean strong tornadoes are likely per se, but could we see a stronger spin up in the line? Sure, but I don't think a widespread strong tornado risk is evident with this setup. Let's see. So how does a front coming over the Rockies make it into a trough ejection? Let's save the questions about general meteorology for another time. I explained cyclogenesis in a recent video. I believe it was one of the recent meteorological discussions, March 14th or 15th. So check that out for sure. I explained the Lee cyclogenesis process there. So check that out. But let's focus on this setup for now. But I appreciate the question for sure. But for now, let's just focus on this setup. Any soundings out of Little Rock to raise eyebrows about? LR, I assume, means Little Rock. And this is the 12Z Little Rock sounding. Not amazing. We will destabilize with time, and deep layer shear will strengthen with time. But overall, nothing really eye-popping yet. But we will see the environment become more favorable with time for Little Rock. Here we are at 21Z at Little Rock there. And you'll see, again, it's very difficult to pick a clean sounding because there's just so much convection. We'll go 18Z here and see. So yeah, somewhat skinny instability, deep layer shear favorable for organized convection, but limited low-level shear. It's just tough to say. It's tough to pick a clean sounding out there, but definitely Little Rock need to be on alert for all hazards, especially damaging wind and a few tornadoes with the line. Love the new interactive live stream. Yeah, I enjoy answering questions like this, so if you guys enjoy this, we'll definitely keep doing them. Southwest Ohio look okay overnight. So Southwest Ohio, very edge of the marginal risk up there. So I would definitely watch stuff tonight. Mostly your threat is going to be overnight, so keep those weather radios handy if you have them. But again, instability up farther north going to keep the ceiling down with that. So that's pretty strong low-level shear down in Ohio, closer to the main surface low. Strong low-level jet up there as well. So strong low-level shear, but very weak instability should keep the threat low. So that's why we have a damaging wind risk with any low-topped line segments and an outside chance at a spin-up tornado or two, given strong low-level shear. But instability should keep things on the weaker side up there. But definitely keep an eye out overnight for Southwest Ohio and vicinity. Don't forget to give the stream a like, y'all. I appreciate it. Yes, definitely like and subscribe. Just hit the like button on the way out. That would be very much appreciated. It does help out the channel a lot. Do you think an upgrade to slight risk for Sunday is possible for Western Pennsylvania and New York? Not sure, because, again, just if you watch the progression of the moisture up here and the instability, it just kind of gets sapped. We could see a little bit. Moisture is limited. But as the trough swings through, kind of near the center of the trough, colder air aloft. But, again, it's tough. Limited instability there. Right now, I don't think so. Would I be surprised if they upgraded to slight for tomorrow up there? No, but for now, I don't think so. But we'll see. Let's see. St. Louis, covered St. Louis just a little bit ago. Low-end risk for damaging winds and large hail. Shreveport, all hazards possible with the squall line moving through in the next several hours going into the evening. So keep an eye out there. Also a low-end chance for prefrontals. Nashville, a little bit farther east of the instability, the greatest instability. So Nashville probably going to see the line wane a little bit with time, but definitely watch out for some damaging winds and maybe an outside chance for a tornado or two. You are in the just on the edge of the slight, so low-end risk for a tornado or two and some damaging winds as the line moves through. But again, instability wanes with eastward extent, so definitely won't be as strong as farther east it appears, but keep an eye out for sure. Jonesboro, talked about Jonesboro earlier. You're in the middle of the slight risk, so keep an eye out for all hazards there. How can you tell a sounding is contaminated? It's these red bars on the left. So these are called omega bars, and that indicates that the sounding is going up in an area of strong ascent, and that usually that's going to be a storm. So it's going up inside a convective element, and where the upward motion, or omega, is very, very strong. So if you see all these large red bars on the side of the sounding, that is a sign that the sounding is contaminated. Let's see. Any more questions? Chasing out by Fort Smith. Any advice? Good luck. That area is very difficult for chasing. Definitely better than farther to the north. Anything north of I-40 up in northwest Arkansas is just atrocious. It's the Ozarks, and it's some of the worst chase terrain ever. Just prioritize safety as always, but especially in that kind of an area. You're gonna have to get upstream, get a view, and kind of wait for things to come to you. But it's definitely difficult out there for sure. Let's see, a few more here, and then we will cut things. Have I used Aguacero? Yes. So actually, they approached me for a partnership, and we were kind of doing some stuff there for a while. I have my set ways that I do things. You see here the stuff I go through, and that's kind of just been my process forever. And it's tough for me. I'm pretty stubborn. It's tough for me to change. Yeah, I have used Aguacero, but I'm just pretty set in my ways when it comes to that. But it is a great product, so I definitely recommend it if you are looking for a good product like that. Cape Girardeau timing, probably going to be late afternoon to evening. We do have some stuff coming in from the west there, so that you can see some isolated storms this afternoon, but most of the stronger stuff going to be afternoon into the evening for there. Louisville, Kentucky, you are in the marginal risk, so low-end risk for damaging winds and maybe a spin up or two. Love the live streams, appreciate it. Thoughts on NATOcast? It's a good tool. Does best on the sneakier days, so the more mesoscale days it does really well. On the big days, doesn't really do as well, it seems, and there is a population bias, so you have to take that in mind. Keep that in mind. Info about the spring chasing tours. Extreme tornado tours. I'm a guide for extreme tornado tours. I'm not going to do all the tours this year. I'll just do a few of them, but extremetornadotours.com. How many tornadoes this year? Probably 20 to 30. It's been a pretty active year. Let's see. A few more here. I was on Arnett. May 27, 2019 breakdown on my list for sure. March 5th, 2025. March 15th, I think you mean. Day 6 enhanced. It was an enhanced early on, yes. So a few more questions on the overall setup. A couple super chats here. Bill Jr., much appreciated. Are we going to get thunder in upstate South Carolina? So tomorrow you could see a few thunderstorms there, but you are not in a severe risk at this time, but could see a few general thunderstorms there tomorrow afternoon. Cash RS, thank you for the super chat. Most of the severe weather knowledge I've gotten over time has been from you. Thank you for helping me live my passion. Absolutely. That makes me always enjoy hearing stuff like that. So really glad to hear that the videos have helped you. Yeah, that's awesome. I very much appreciated. Let's see a few more here, and then we'll wrap things up. Looking for some questions on the setup. Could you pull a sounding in the area of Memphis at the time of it kicking off? Let's see. So Memphis, going to be more overnight. And again, it's going to be tough to pull one. It's going to be late afternoon to through the evening for Memphis. You see this is at 3Z, so that's going to be 10 p.m. for Memphis. And I will bet money that this is going to be contaminated, but we'll try. You see the instability axis on the NAM here, very narrow. The strongest dew point's very narrow there. So yeah, it's just difficult to pull one, but if we were to get a clean sounding, would have enough instability and wind shear to support that damaging wind and tornado risk. East Central Indiana, wind and spin-ups. Yep, low-end risk for damaging winds and spin-ups. Yes. Let's see. Possibility of a tornadic supercell or two in southwest Mississippi. Again, if those prefrontals can get going, then possibly. But it is, I think, a very conditional risk ahead of the line. This is going to be it would mostly be an overnight, evening to nighttime, an overnight thing there as the line comes through. But that is going to be 6Z. And we do see some stronger low-level shear and enough instability to support that. So if they can develop, there might be a tornado threat with those. If any supercells that do tend to get a little bit feistier there in southwest Mississippi. So worth keeping an eye on, but a low risk for now. Let's see, any more? East Central Indiana, covered that. Will you make a post on the 11:30 update? Yes, if the 11:30 update is a significant change from what it is now, if they go enhanced or anything, or if the lines shift, I'll definitely make a post. Will we get a more significant event in October with current troughing trends? The jet stream does look to remain active, so certainly would not be out of the question. We'll have to just keep an eye on that, but it could we could see some more severe weather. Thanks, Grace, for very much appreciated for your Omega work there, and some good info about the setup today. So much appreciated. Little Rock, covered Little Rock, all hazards possible, mostly damaging winds and a few spin-ups. May 20th, 2019. I have a video on that on the channel. Aguacero, I did answer Aguacero about Aguacero. I have used them before, but I'm kind of set in my ways, so I just wasn't able to get into it as much. But it is a great product. Eastern Virginia, 1 a.m. on Monday. Squall line very strong. Yeah, again, instability is going to be quite weak out there. So, yeah, I mean, just very, very limited instability. So, I don't expect a high-end risk out there, but certainly worth watching. If you are in the marginal for tomorrow, Eastern Virginia. Yeah, so definitely worth watching, but instability is just going to be pretty weak there. Vorticity and 3 Cape in Ohio tomorrow, and reflectivity. Don't want to spend too much time on tomorrow. I want to focus on today, but yeah, the cold air aloft is going to overspread that region, so could see a few low top storms up there, but mostly weak instability going to keep the threat limited up in there. So Little Rock already answered. Poto, Oklahoma. Going to be with this early round of storms coming through, and it's already kind of getting messy out there. So another couple hours, and the threat should be fairly over for sort of that part of the state. But definitely it is messy already, and not really seeing any signs of super robust convection within the line. But this is definitely heading your way down by Colgate, Atoka, Durant, moving up this way toward the Poto area. So again, damaging winds, most likely threat, maybe some isolated large hail in some of the stronger cores, but that is a few more hours, and then the threat should pass you on to the east. Fair Oaks, Arkansas. I do not know where Fair Oaks, Arkansas is. You're in the Delta, so that's good. Do I have a shot at seeing anything? Yeah, you'll see the squall line come through later. So probably some structure, shelf cloud. Chance for prefrontals up there pretty low, but could see a spin up or two up there as well. Thoughts on some of the AI forecasting? Wait and see. We'll just have to see how that stuff goes over, but or kind of it's still kind of experimental. But some of the models, we'll see how their performance does over time, and if those models do well, then we'll definitely start incorporating them into forecasts. Everyone will, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. April 4th, 2025, breakdown. I think I'm gonna skip that just because there's so many other ones I want to cover. April 2nd really was the big one from that setup, and we already covered that. So I don't think I'm gonna do anything from that stretch, but we'll see. We'll see. Northern Missouri, again, damaging winds and a few tornadoes. Memphis Metro, already did that. Very difficult to pull a sounding for Memphis Metro, unfortunately, just because on the NAM, it's very, very limited as far as the width of the warm sector there. And so it's very difficult to pull a clean sounding because there's a ton of convection ongoing at that point. But I promise you there's enough shear for organized convection, including that damaging wind and low-end tornado risk. March 14, 2025, posted a video on that a few weeks back. Check out that on the channel. Fall season, tough to say. Gulf is warm. Jet stream may remain active. It's La Nina, so average to maybe above average. Would not be surprised to see that happen. Yearly predictions. I usually make my spring predictions in February. Northern Missouri. Yes, low-end tornado risk for Northern Missouri. Let's see. Already mentioned St. Louis. St. Louis, very low-end damaging wind risk and a very low-end tornado risk. Houston, not in a risk. You were farther south there, not in a severe weather risk, so maybe some general thunderstorms for you. St. Louis, all the way through the afternoon and early evening, need to be on alert. Andrew, what's up? What's going on? I enjoyed that interview. Drought relief, yes. We do have a flooding risk. That is a good point to bring up. Slight risk for excessive rainfall, southern Missouri into southern Illinois today, with training storms along that, and just a lot of convection overall. So could see some, a very wide swath of beneficial rain over the next 3 days. Nice swath of some good beneficial rainfall, 1 to 2 plus inches in some spots there from the southern plains into eastern Canada. So yes, rainfall definitely going to be helpful for some folks with this system. Central Kentucky, it's going to be more of an overnight thing with you. Nighttime, evening to overnight for Central Kentucky. Overseas tornadoes, yes. Just find me an archive that has data like ours. That's the thing that is a sticking point for me on that. There's not a good data archive for those usually, so it's tougher to do a full breakdown like I can with U.S. events. But I would like to do some overseas events because there have been some really good ones. Missouri, pretty much have answered that here. Definitely rewind the stream for Missouri stuff. You are in the slight risk there, southern portion of Missouri. All hazards on the table there. Mounds, Oklahoma. I don't know where Mounds, Oklahoma is. Oh, by Tulsa? Yeah, so again, next couple of hours, got stuff moving in from the west. Actually, right now, moving in there, some stronger storms. But once this moves through, you should be done with the severe threat today. Just some light rain after that. So next hour or two, maybe stay hunkered down, and then the severe threat will pass off to your east. Starkville, yes, squall line overnight. So keep those weather radios handy. How surprised were you when SPC introduced the high risk? Very surprised for April 2nd. Yeah, we talked about that in the video there. Think I'll ever sell Convective Chronicles merch? Perhaps. We'll see. I've had some people ask that before, so we'll see for sure. May 16th case study is coming as well. Yes, just after June 20th, of course, move that to the forefront. And then after that, going to return to chronological order. So some April stuff, and then we'll get into the May events after that. So yes, May 16th and May 18th are coming. Appreciate the kind words, y'all. Can super outbreaks occur over the ocean? Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, Florida coast tomorrow, nothing crazy. Maybe a very low end risk. Again, instability going to be pretty weak tomorrow. So Florida coast, not just keep an eye out. Isolated severe risk tomorrow, but nothing really crazy. It looks like at this point. How am I using Weatherfront on Mac? So again, with Storm Chaser coaching, we're working with Weatherfront, and so I have access to a test version. This is the iPad app. It's a little bit glitchy. Like I can't even zoom out. I'm trying to zoom out and zoom in right now, and I can't even do that unless I get kind of lucky. Sometimes I've done it before, but it's difficult. So it's a little bit glitchy, but at least I have something here for Weatherfront on Mac, and that's my big thing. I need a desktop application, and they're definitely working on that. So that is how I'm able to get it on Mac. Was there a day this year that surprised me that it was not a high risk? Not really, honestly. March 14th probably should have been, in hindsight. You could have flip-flopped March 14th and 15th risks, and it would have been it would have worked out well, but March 14th probably would have been the day, looking back at least. Of course, hindsight is 2020, but March 14th probably should have been a high risk in hindsight. Of course, they had a big moderate risk. It was forecasted pretty well, and SBC did a great job with that. West Kentucky, mostly going to be that line coming through, isolated damaging wind and spin up risk, mainly late afternoon through the evening and nighttime hours. Appreciate the donation, Blue Sky. Weatherfront, yeah, so that's how I can get Weatherfront on Mac. I am able to get it through the test version, through Test Flight. This is the iPad app, though, so they don't have a specific Mac app yet, or desktop app yet. They're working on it, though. Yeah. Weatherfront is legit. I do like Weatherfront. I've used Radar Scope forever, so it's taking me some getting used to with Weatherfront, but it's a phenomenal app. What's my take on this year's fall severe season? It's tough to say. Looks like we're gonna have it's weak La Nina plus warm Gulf usually means active things. So if I haven't really looked too much into it, but that would be my take on it right now. Would not be surprised to see an average to slightly above average season with some decent events. I have heard of Supercell WX, yes. Would I ever consider applying the SPC or NWS? No, mainly because I hate shift work. I hate shift work. I do not want to work the graveyard shift. I like my sleep. All right, any final questions here, and we will wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. Hopefully, you got your questions answered on this setup. Again, overall, it looks pretty messy and mostly more of a linear type deal. But the risk for all hazards is there. Mostly now a damaging wind and low-end spin-up tornado risk within the line. We'll have to keep an eye on prefrontal activity, but the main story with this is going to be the line moving through that slight risk area. Especially this afternoon into the overnight hours as storms mature a little bit. So appreciate all the kind words, everybody. Thank you for the super chats, those of you who contributed there. But thank you to all of you for watching. Definitely looking to do some more of these going on into the future, especially during this secondary season. So appreciate everybody. And so thank you for joining me. Thank you for all the kind words in the chat, and stay safe out there today. If you're chasing, stay safe. Good luck. And if you just live in these areas, definitely keep those weather radios handy and have multiple ways of receiving warnings, and we'll get through this just fine. So, going to sign off. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next time.